And we're live. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're watching. I'm glad that you're here. This is Marion Spears Carr. I'm the Managing Director of Healthcare Life Sciences for Comar Partners. We're an international executive search firm. And this is my podcast. This is my LinkedIn Live show that I started a year and a half ago, where I introduce people in my network to my network and beyond, these great leaders. And today, I'm incredibly excited and honored to talk about our topic today is leading a multi-generational workforce, which is something I've spoken on at several conferences, but from a millennial leader's perspective. And I'm really looking forward to that. And our guest today, or my guest today, is Veronica Villarreal, and I pronounced it right. Didn't I, Veronica?
You did.
I had to practice that. Veronica Villarreal. She is the Chief Ambulatory Officer at DHR Health in Edinburgh, Texas. And she's a millennial leader, and she brings so much to the table. The reason I reached out to her was an article that I found on LinkedIn. Veronica, say hello to the audience and introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning, afternoon, everything Marion said.
Exactly. And the reason I say that is because the show's live, but people watch it at different times. If you're watching live, please let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Veronica, let's just jump right in. You are a young leader, but you have a massive scope of responsibility at DHR Health. And for those of you who aren't familiar with DHR Health, it's the largest physician-owned hospital in the country. Amazing organization that services the Rio Grande Valley of Texas and growing. But Veronica, tell us a little bit about like how big a scope you have. I was looking at all the stuff that you do. You have a massive scope of that you cover. Tell us a little bit about that first.
So I oversee the operational component of the multi-specialty clinics, all of the employed physicians that we own or that we employ, not own. Yeah. So we're a physician-owned hospital, and it's a great organization for the community. And we have about 75, and I always say plus.
Yeah, gotcha.
We are just employing more physicians just because of the community need. And we're all the way from Rio Grande City to Bronzeville, which is an 82-mile radius of the Rio Grande Valley. So I say we're at the tip of Texas, right 20 minutes from the border of Mexico, not El Paso, but tip of Texas, Bronzeville, where SpaceX now is with Elon Musk. They were going to have a launch. I think a couple of days ago. My mom was super excited. She woke up at 3:45. She was meeting her astronomy club to go over there.
Oh, wow.
And then it malfunctioned. So they were doing it again today. And she's like, I'll just see it on the news.
Oh, wow. So disappointing. Yeah. And I'm very familiar with your area. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in the executive search space for a long, long time, 32 years. And Texas is one of the key areas that I work. I was literally just flew. I was not far from you yesterday, Veronica. I flew into to San Antonio for the day and back last night. I got back home about 2 o'clock from my flight a.m. because my flight was delayed, probably for some of the same reasons. But Veronica, let's jump right into it. The thing that struck me about your article was you sharing your point of reference. And for those of you who are working in our industry and in any industry in the United States right now, this is a real unprecedented time. We have 5 generations still in the workforce, a lot of younger generations, obviously new young generations coming in. Millennials. Oh, by the way, Veronica, here's a quick question. How does it feel to be the middle child now all of a sudden? You guys weren't the middle child now, but now you kind of are. The millennials aren't the young ones anymore.
I know. I was just talking to one of my team members, and she's in a different generation. And I was like, now I feel old. And she's like, hey. But yeah, yesterday we had actually a talk on like multi-generational leadership. And like I was mentioning to you, I wrote this article in 2020, and I was like, you know what? Let me just skim through it again today and see like what I said. Maybe I feel differently, or maybe nope, it's the same things. Like I mentioned, I feel like we're still going through. Leadership is rough, and leading just a multi-generational team is even a little bit more complex, but a lot more rewarding, because you get to learn from others. They get to learn from you. Everyone's in different courses in their career lives and in their personal. So you get to like experience from different people without you having those experiences yourself. So I really enjoy it, but just as much as I enjoy it, that's as much work and effort I have to put into for us to, grow together stronger. But
Absolutely on point. And let's just shout out to some people checking in. Laura Berger checking in from Davison, North Carolina. Hey, Laura, good to see you. Rachel's checking in from Galveston, Texas. My friend Doug Luckett, who's a great CEO leader, healthcare leader, is checking in from South Carolina. Takira from Atlanta. Hey, hello, Takira. It's good to see you. Laverne also checking in from Hampton, Georgia. Ruan checking in from Philadelphia, and Aaron checking in from Cincinnati. If you're watching live, please post in the comments. Let us know. And then if you have questions for Veronica or for us, please post those in the comments as well. Veronica, so tell me, you and I were talking before we got on the air about one of the senior executives within your organization and how he brings a very unique and different aspect from his life experience. As a millennial leader, as a leader, tell me a little bit about how you go about getting to know the people that you want to lead. How do you get to understand them individually, and what are some things that you've learned about the different generations, not from a cliche perspective, but from a value perspective? So I guess the question is how do you go about understanding and connecting with the people that you lead, and how do you understand their point of reference? I'd love for you to talk about that.
I think from what we were talking about is I try to put myself in their shoes, but then I really try to understand where they came from personally. Is it a different culture that they were raised in? Is their schooling different, where they learned different types of leadership styles or different skill sets? So that's kind of how I've navigated to understand where they're coming from. Because I may come up with an idea and I'm like, yes, we need to do it. But then someone else is like, well, have you thought about this? Do you know that it's going to affect that? Do you know? I'm like, no, I didn't think about it. And I don't know if it's a millennial thing, but I get excited with different things, like shiny objects, like this is a new process. No one's doing it. Let's be the most competitive. But sometimes I now have checked myself, because the team used to get really excited. Yeah, let's do it. Well, we can do so much with as much time as we have. So I've toned it down and said, okay, is it realistic for us to do this year, or in 3 months, or in 6 months? But that's come with experience, learning people's facial reactions, or they're just coming in your office like, I need to speak with you. I know that's serious. Like, okay, I need to focus my attention and listen. And then just people's behaviors. I think every day we pretty much have the same personality, but when you see that kind of declining, or it's going this way, that's when you kind of need to do, like, I guess not an emotional check, but a check-in, like, hey, how are things going? It may not be work related, but like I always say, what's going on in your personal is still going to affect you in your work, whether you like it or not. Why? Because you're always here. You're more here than at home.
Exactly. So let's talk about that. So it's a couple of things also I really liked about what you wrote in the article, and what caught my eye, and that's why I invited you on the show, is that you talked about the perspective of a leader, not only from a millennial perspective, but also the fact that you're female and you're Latina, and you have that different culture background than some of the people you engage with that have to lead. What's been some surprising things that you've learned through that journey about, from your point of reference as a Latina and as a female leader, and frankly being young in your role, in the scope of the role that you play? What have been like some of the surprise things that you've learned that's really been helpful along the way?
I think we have more insecurities than people think we have. And that's just like myself speaking, maybe someone else speaking, but people don't know that, right? So for me, being in the C-suite at age 30, I mean, I was like, am I going to get respected? I have to deal with 200 physicians. Like, do they think I'm even smart enough to lead their clinics? There was so many building of relationships and getting myself out of my comfort zone to do. And the Latina piece, I went to my master's program that wasn't in the Valley, which the Valley is pretty much predominantly Hispanic. So to me, it was normal. Everyone kind of looked like me, talked like me, Tex-Mexy. But when I went somewhere else, I was like, okay, I am the minority now. This is what people are saying.
Gotcha.
So from there, I was like, okay, I was more intimidated. These people talked more eloquent. They maybe had gone to better schools than me. So those things were kind of my roadblocks until I started saying, okay, well, someone gave me a chance to do this, which was my former boss. He was like, you can take on my role. I didn't want it. I was like, no, I'm too young. People are not going to take me serious. And he was like, okay, well, then someone else is going to come in and they're going to have their own vision.
Yeah.
That's when I thought about it. I'm like, we've worked so hard and I know what is best for our community because I've lived here. Well, I think I know what's best. I didn't want someone to come and kind of break that. So that's honestly the reason why I took the role. I don't regret it. But being so young, I think it's my own insecurities because someone's like, you got this, you're schooled, people on your team love you, they're loyal to you, people follow you. And I just get little reassurances from clinic managers like, you have done a great job, or you keep doing what you're doing. So those things do help. Do I say I love pats on the back? No, I get really uncomfortable.
I gotcha.
But knowing that people do see the change that you're trying to make, that does help me. But being the youngest C-suite and not acting or behaving, this is what I say. I am how I am now from a work setting to a personal. I don't change. Like, I am who I am. I think it makes it easier to not go from like one personality to another. This is me at home and at work. And people may not love it, but I think explaining the reason why my approach is like that helps.
Yeah, I think that transparency, and obviously, by calendar, I would be considered a baby boomer because when I was born, but I probably feel like I'm more of an X. But like being that consistent leader, being like, this is how I am, and making changes where I need to make changes, that's important, and being authentic. I teach a class on leadership class called Authentic Gratitude Communication Framework, and one of the key things is that authenticity, which is what you're really talking about being you. We've got some people checking in. Chad Knight, another great hospital executive, has checked in from New Jersey. Heidi Castillo is checking in from Louisville. There's a question from Laverne. It's a lot of big question, but let's bring it up. She's an aspiring and growing leader in Georgia. And she goes, how can an individual effectively handle a situation which they assume a new supervisory role over an older team member with seniority? And I think Laura has answered, kind of chimed in on it, who displays immediate resentment towards them. And you probably have faced this, Veronica. Great question. What's kind of, and I want to come back to the unfair part, but what are some of the things that you do when you're confronted with that?
So
That you've had to do? That's a great question.
Yeah, thank you, Laverne. Actually, this was my experience when I first took on my first team, which was actually here at DHR. All of them were experts in their fields.
Mm.
All of them knew a lot more than me. And I was not going to tell them, I know more than you, you have to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
So my approach to that was, you all are experts at your field. The reason why this team was created and I was given the opportunity to work alongside you was to share your knowledge. And why? Because you all are the ones that will make our clinics successful. And just having those open conversations, asking questions, I knew that they may have thought, this is so dumb, but to me, I didn't know it. So
Yeah.
being confident in, you are in that role. They are going to maybe undermine you, maybe test you. That's okay. But it's always that intentionality. You're there to support them, to grow them, to get better together, to make a bigger impact.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I really I want to say won them over. Most of them are still here with us. I don't necessarily oversee them now because of my role, but all of them still reach out to me if they need anything. I'm very available to them. But that's how I played that, and that is in my article. I reread it.
It is.
But that's what I did because I knew, I mean, I was intimidated. These people had 15 years, 20 years. Some of them were directors of business office, and I was just coming in as a manager. Some of them were clinic managers. So I knew what I had, but all of them were great, passionate. They were all women. The team was made up of women, passionate women that just were in this role now and wanted to share their wealth. So it's beautiful to see where they're at now and where our relationship has built. But I always say, like, that was my first team, and I mean, biasly, like that's my heart.
Yeah, you connected with those people. When I first got out of undergraduate, I went into the textile industries where I grew up. I grew up in the Mills of North Carolina and got into a management role very young, kind of similar in your path. By the time I was 21, I was managing a lot of people, and the majority of them, it was a sheet operation. We were sewing and making sheets and bedspreads. And the majority of the people that I had to manage were not only much older typically than I am, but they were almost all female. So as a male in that environment, being a 21-year-old kid, I was terrified at times to lead in that situation. So, but to your point, and the reason I was successful is I did have a mentor who said, don't go into it like you know everything, because you don't. Right. And the second piece was,
and they hate that.
They hate it. They do. They hate it. Don't tell them. Yeah.
Don't tell them you know it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know this and this and this. You're totally in trouble. Right. But to your point, is getting to know them individually. I think that's a key piece. Laura has chimed in on it. And she goes, for what it's worth, if I have a leader younger than me, I acknowledge they've done the work and have the skills to be a leader. And she goes, it's not a problem for me. And I think, for those of us, and Laura's a much younger than I am, but she's making a good point. And my audience also is a lot of senior leadership professionals. I think that's a great attitude to have. Is like, acknowledge that you had the skills as a leader, and be open-minded to that. And by the way, for those of you who are new to the show, we had a lot of people sign up to watch the show. This is called Healthcare Thought Leadership LinkedIn Live Show. It's my show that I started last year to really highlight people across a lot of different areas that I work in, which is life sciences, biotech, hospital management, physician practice, et cetera. And this idea that I want to share my amazing thought leaders in my network and beyond. Veronica, so let's talk about this, for example. One of the things that I'm interested in is how different generations learn differently. Like you probably learn different than as coming up through your schooling and your home and everything. You learn different than maybe a baby boomer or even an X, or even now the younger generation. There seems to be a different process to learning. As a leader, how do you manage that? Because if you've got a group of people who learn differently, what are some of the things as a millennial leader that you've learned? In other words, I guess the question is, how have you adapted to the learning styles of the people you try to lead?
Yeah. So my role, I oversee compliance, HR, operations, our support teams, our education team. So I know I said it on another podcast, and if Dr. Singh is saying, well, I call myself a mini CEO because
I got you.
the clinics are a different type of beautiful monster than the hospital.
Yep.
And so I was education is very important to me. I feel like if we do not train staff to do their job, then it's our fault. It's not theirs. Yeah. So we started our education classes only to have PowerPoint and quizzes. And I started going and I'm like, I'm going to forget this if I was to go back. Yeah. So then we started doing hands-on, and then they started doing scenario scripting. So we've just added to what the needs are of our employees, of our staff. So we are very key to feedback, negative and positive. That's the only way we're going to get better is by knowing what people need. And I tell them, if I don't know that you want to move up, or if I don't know what your career growth is, I can't help, but I would love to if you want to sit down and speak with me about it. So learning styles, they're different. We have to have visual aids. We have to over communicate. Some people this could have been done in an email, but some people want a presentation with their peers to brainstorm, to ask questions. So we have that too. We have phone calls that are regularly for our team to get on reminders. Yeah. I used to get that feedback. Well, we already trained on it. What year did you train on it?
Exactly.
Because we've been here 5 years or 3 years doesn't mean that person has been with us that long. Yeah. So it's just that constant re-educating in different sets, but we've been able to have more formal education trainings. And also when I meet with my directors, some of them are way more organized, where they keep a tracker and they have to have an end date and due date. And I love that. But there's some, if I was to force them to have a tracker and update it weekly, and they'd be like, I have to focus on this, not that. So if they are completing their job, they have little to none turnover, their positions are happy, I'm not gonna be that micromanaging to say you need to have this for me on this date. Like, people work differently, people learn differently.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for young leaders and seasoned leaders, that understanding that people learn differently and are adaptable in our approach from a communication perspective, that a lot of the stuff that I'm writing on and working around on the leadership development side of the work that I do has really been centered on that. This idea that we have to show far more adaptability and flexibility and meet. And the takeaway here is you meet them where they are, as opposed to having them to come to where you are, so to speak, in a sense. A chief nursing officer Chief Nursing Executive. Hello, Jorge down in South Florida is checking in. Thank you for being with us. If you have, we have about 5 more minutes. So if anyone in the audience has a question for Veronica, please post it in the comments. We'd love to have you. And if, by the way, if you watch this, post the live version. You can also please post your questions and we'll follow up with you. Veronica, let me ask you this question. You've grown dramatically. And by the way, let me back up for a moment. The person she was referring to is Dr. Manish Singh. He's the CEO of DHR Health. And I think the world of Dr. Singh as a leader and as a person. He's a great individual. Veronica, so here's the question. Where you are now, what are the things you're doing now? You've grown so much. You have so much responsibility, so many different things. What's some of the key things that you're working on learning now? What are you adding to your quiver? What are you adding to your skill set? And this is a lesson for those leaders out there, no matter where they are in their career, in terms of developing themselves, continue to develop. What are you working on in terms of self-development right now?
I think for me, I did get an executive coach because I wanted a better executive presence. How do I react with different things? What are my triggers? And having that safe place to kind of just vent and be like, this is what I did. This is what I said.
Yeah.
How can I fix it? So for me, I have gotten an executive coach and she's amazing. Her name's Vanessa Yu. And she's really coached me and given me books too. But also from a professional team development, this year I really want to slow down in the sense of focusing on my direct reports and seeing what they're needing, because we're so big and we grow so much all the time. Sometimes I lose sight of, okay, I have not really spent a meaning, but more intentional to them, not just the work, because sometimes we get, okay, and what are you working on now? Okay, where are you on this and this? Instead of having that like 5 minutes of, are you okay? Do you need something? Etc. So those are my two big, is kind of building that executive presence. I call myself a lifelong learner because I don't know it all. I don't ever want to know it all. I think that is way too much responsibility. I'm okay with not knowing it all. But I always want to do better for the team. I think that's my biggest purpose, is to help others. That's it. In any capacity that I can, helping others is my purpose in life. And I've known that, I guess, for many years. It was just being in a position where I can have more impact.
Yeah, I love that. And Doug has chimed in, and I want to share this. Just wanted to praise you, Veronica, for having an open mind to the person, the potential behind the generational classification. That is a core of inclusive leadership, and I absolutely agree with you, Doug. He also, and I'm very much involved with this, also like that you read facial expressions versus just listening verbally to what your staff says. And I think that's, he's pointing out some major piece there. Doug, thanks for chiming in. So let me ask you this question. I want to come back to that. One of the things, when we are in the presence of other employees or the people we're tending to lead, or our peers or anyone, in today's world, I fly all the time. I was in the airport yesterday and I watched 5 different people run into people because they were looking at their phone, right? Walking and looking at their phone. And I just noticed, and this is completely anecdotal, that a lot of people don't make eye contact as much as they used to because they got so many different things going on the phone. Veronica, how have you taught yourself to pay attention to that facial expression and to make eye contact? And how did you learn that? Like, is that just normal for you? Is that part of who you are? Or I'd love to hear your points.
I've always loved, and I have told people this, I'm a collector of personalities. I love different types of personalities. I think I learn from each one. So I always, I don't know, I think all of us are, it's like no one really understands all of us because we're all so different. And I think
Exactly.
that's the beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So I've always been so interested in other people's like care values and cultures. How were they raised? That's so interesting to me. I think I started when I was 21. I did a study abroad in Morocco.
Wow.
And yeah, completely different third world country. I love Morocco. I've been to Italy. I love Italy, but Morocco, I always say, is my heart too.
I got you.
Because it made me appreciate the little things in life. We stayed the night at a Sahara desert, and I was like, I'm not sleeping. I don't know what's gonna crawl on me. We saw the guys like running around, stomping on a spider, and I was like, what did they just do? They're like, oh, it's just a poisonous one, but they caught it. I'm like,
that's terrifying. Yeah, that would be terrifying.
Happiest humans beings I've
Incredible.
ever met in my entire life. And I came back and I said, I'm not gonna worry about the material things, the little things. I'm gonna worry about people. And if they are so happy with the little things that they have, like, why can't I get there? So
there you go.
Since then, that has been really my purpose, is seeing it, sensing it, and getting to know people. Because if you don't know them, you cannot tell their facial expressions are different. You cannot tell their body language are different. You have to take the time to really, I mean, if you want to, right?
Yeah.
Get to know people.
That's so huge. And we're running out of time, but I think this is a really important question. And this is Dr. Jennifer Todd, and she's checking in from Texas as well, just so you'll know. Can you share anything that has stimulated kind of intergenerational collaboration in your workplace? And also, have there been any barriers? And unfortunately, we're gonna have to wrap up on that question. But what are your thoughts? Anything you've done to try to encourage this ability for these people to work together? Great question, Dr. Todd.
More understanding of each other, knowing their preferences. We have leadership talks. I used to do it too before I have someone else that I feel like they don't want to hear me talk all the time. So now someone else does it, and we're just always talking about tips and tricks, team building. I do have different generational VPs and directors. So it's getting them in the same room and brainstorming together. That has helped. But it's now getting the Gen Z. So I'm really excited to work with more Gen Zs to really understand them. I know some of our other generations are like, no, they job hop, they're not loyal. I'm like, but they are so much more in tune of what they should do and what's not right and what's right. And they can look it up on social media and this. So I think the challenge is great. It's interesting to me. So I'm excited to learn that generation more.
That's awesome. Yeah. I have to say I'm gloating a little bit, or maybe not gloating is not the right word, but it's just interesting because the things that my dad's from the great generation, said about my generation are the same, almost in some ways, the same thing that my generation said about millennials, that millennials are. It's just funny to hear somebody like, I can't believe Gen Z are just always job hopping. I mean, like they're 19 years old. Of course they're I job hopped, but I was like, come on, just stop with that. Veronica, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being on this show, and thank you for everyone in the audience. Love to have you back again and have a conversation. I think there's a series that needs to be done on this generational leadership context. So thank you for being with us. Healthcare Thought Leadership, for those who are watching, is my show. I'm Marion Spears-Carr. I'm the Managing Director of Healthcare and Life Sciences at Comar Partners. We're an international executive search firm. Last point, Veronica, share with us one thing that a good takeaway on what new leaders need to do. Where do you start? And that's the last thing, and then we'll wrap up.
Where do you start as a new leader? Know your team and be empathetic. I think if you're empathetic, everything else follows.
What a great tie on the bow. So anyway, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Those of you watching, have an amazing weekend, or Please post your questions in the comments. Have a fantastic Friday. I'm Marion Spears Carr, and we're going to go off the air right now. Have a great day.